Blow the forever.
All right, the doors are now locked. You are stuck with us for the next hour.
This is a battle royale.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is exactly 1 o'clock, so we will get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about how to teach a board game. My name is Jessica, and I have been paid to teach board games before, really like board games, and I'm excited to teach you guys. And now we will all introduce ourselves.
I'm Arden Winter. I, too, have been paid to teach people how to play board games, and I've been playing board games since I was, 5, and I'm older than that now, some amount.
A little bit.
A likely story. I'm Eric Alexander. I have paid for many board games. I own a number of board games that is almost 200 now, and have taught most of them, and have taught a number of people in this room how to play board games. Mysterious.
I'm Brian. I'm from the same pedigree as Jess and Arden. I was also paid to teach people board games. I've been board gaming almost my entire life. Recently been getting more and more into RPGs. Not that I was never not into RPGs, but I don't have a 200 game collection, but it's pretty substantial.
Got a large game collection.
Yeah. And I kind of specialize in I really enjoy the games that we can kind of teach quickly. So that's going to be one of the games that we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, that's me. You're going to hear a lot of me, though.
Hi, I'm Lauren. I get taught a lot of board games.
True.
Is everybody audible?
Can you hear us all?
Cool.
Great.
Good. Awesome.
We are an audiobook.
Okay.
Continuing.
So has this ever happened to you? Check out this very cute graphic. Basically, this is my nightmare, and I think this is a lot of people's nightmare. Just wanting to play a game, having your friends, and then them checking out before you've even explained half of the rules. So our goal is to avoid this very instance. Let's do it.
So the very first and one of the most important things about teaching people board games is to just know who the people you're teaching are. This runs the gambit for a wide variety of things, from the types of games they'll enjoy to how they actually learn to how you keep them interested while you're doing the actual teach and what they might do during the game. There are, as you can see, we have several game options here. And some folks may enjoy games more than others. I particularly do not like deception games. I'm a very bad liar. I'm bad at being the loudest person in the room, so I'm bad at deception games and don't like them. As an extension of that, I don't get taught a lot of deception games. But knowing who the folks you are teaching are will help you in a wide variety of different ways and may end up being the answer to several of your questions at the end of this panel, so think about it before asking.
All right, so you got your audience, you got your game. Now comes the hard part. The onus is on you to know the rules forward and backwards. This typically starts with you reading through the rule book, getting to know how things get set up. But there's a number of things that you can think about or do in order to help you learn how to play the game you're going to teach. There's a bunch of really good YouTube channels out there. A lot of them specialize in how to play X, and it'll walk you through every single step. They'll be teaching you, and you can full on rip that off for your teach, or you can think about, well, my audience doesn't know these words because they're really gamer game terminology. They maybe do not know what drafting means, and you'll need to explain that to them. In addition, as you're learning the rules, think about the questions that you have. If you're just reading through the rule book, think to yourself, is this the correct way to teach this game? Board game designers and people who make rule books are people. They will make mistakes. They will lay things out in a way that feels logical to them, but it might not be the best way to teach the game. Some of them are really set up as step by step, and we'll talk a little bit about a step-by-step learning process a little bit later. But you can also think about, this rule feels fuzzy. I don't exactly know what this means. Gets explained later and becomes clear to you. So work that into your teach. Work on clarifying any questions that you have as you're learning. But sometimes you do just get stuck. So if we can go to the next slide, there are some additional resources. I already mentioned YouTube, but there are a lot of great resources out there where you can either get in touch with the community. Discord and Board Game Geek are places for, just to shout out to, there's also, other forms of social media where you can go and talk to other board gamers. You might even be lucky and talk to the designers, the publishers themselves. And they will have played the game before. They'll have all the same rules, questions, difficulties that you had, and they will have solutions that they can provide you with. In addition, it might be a good idea for you to look up a FAQ or an errata. Use your Google Foo for that. Make sure to not just trust an AI summary if you see one, because they will frequently get those sorts of things wrong. You maybe don't need to read through all of it, but simply knowing that you have access to these resources will be very helpful for you during your teach and if anything crops up during gameplay.
So Brian mentioned that sometimes you don't want to structure your teach in exactly the way that the rules in the rulebook are ordered, because sometimes they'll be laid out in the most logical way to explain things, literally, but it might not be, one, the most compelling sales pitch for a game, and it might, two, not be the way that the information is best understood. So if you look at a rule book that says, here's the intro, here's all the pieces that are in the box, here's how you set up, here's how you take your turn, here's how you score, here's how you win, that's helpful, but sometimes you need to know information about scoring in order to know what things are on the board. And sometimes you need to know information about how you take your turn to know what you're going to need to do to win. So sometimes you need to flip things around. And there's going to be a lot of information that comes up in the rule book that, although it is in the first paragraph, is not relevant information until the fifth turn when the haunt happens in Betrayal at House on the Hill, right? So I don't need to explain a lot of things about the haunt in Betrayal at the beginning. And we were talking about knowing your audience, and a lot of what knowing your audience includes too is like getting people hooked on the idea of a game. So I want to have a good sales pitch, and that good sales pitch is not, inside of this box, there are 17 meeples of each of 5 colors. That's not really an exciting way to get people to play a board game. But we're playing a game where we're playing kind of Mancala with these different little meeples, and we're taking control of spaces on the board, and we're scoring points as we try and control these different tribes as they move through the desert.
Love 5 Tribes.
Right? I haven't played it so
So
long. But that is like an interesting way to describe flavorfully what we're doing. It gives a super high level understanding of what that game is. And then if people say, oh, that sounds fun, I want to play, then we'll start giving some explanation of like, okay, so here's how you set up the board, which we'll talk about how you start building that explanation later. But a lot of times when you're having to do that, I promise the game's going to be fun eventually, kind of convincing, it's because you are getting involved in explaining a lot of minutia that's not interesting or comprehensible to the people that you're teaching, because they don't have the relevant info that they need to then get really into the details. And the reason we have this structured this way is because if you know the tiniest thing about journalism, you hear about the inverted pyramid of how you explain information or how you structure an essay sometimes, where you start with like the lead, that's the broadest, most highest level one sentence that's going to get people interested, and then you get more and more granular with your details as you go. You do not start with the tiniest little detail of your news article. You start with the headline, and then you get more specific as you go. And keeping that mindset in your head as you go through your teach all the way through can really help you kind of structure that explaining and keep people hooked as you're going.
Yeah, we like to call it who you are, what are you doing, how do you win?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You may actually get someone to be able to play Campaign for Africa with you if you teach in this way.
Maybe.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck. Maybe. It's more possible than otherwise.
All right, so we spoke earlier about a game that we will be teaching you. We don't have the box with us today, but sorry, we forgot it at home. But it is called Bomb Busters, and it's very fun. And we have some examples on the board, which we will be showing to explain some of these concepts. So the first thing that I would recommend you do is to distract and involve your players. Lauren, I'm going to roast you right now. I'm sorry. She was on her phone. Was she not on her phone?
She's on her phone right now.
No, she's doing great.
She's
but
productively.
sometimes, if people aren't actively doing something, they will check out. I do it all the time myself. So that's when you can distract and involve your players. So for instance, one of the images up there are these little chips that have to be shuffled. So maybe one of the first things I do is I put the chips on the board and I say, hey guys, shuffle this for me. This is a great time. They feel like they're helping. I can read the rules if there's any questions that I don't remember, if I need to remember something. You can also ask them to pick one of these really cute little characters. It doesn't change anything at all. But allowing people to feel invested in the game makes them want to learn the rules of it more.
and they're doing something with their hands, which means they can't be looking at the
At their
content
phone,
Not
at the content
on their
cube.
phone.
because
Or-
you gave them tasks.
If you don't have small tokens or cards to shuffle, snacks. Snacks works really well. You know, maybe some chips at the table, maybe something to do. So get people at the table mentally, not just physically.
So another part of this, and if you've played a complicated board game with me, you know that sometimes I really feel a little bit like a taskmaster when I'm explaining games. Because the first thing that I'll say, right, is I need you to be with me while I go through this whole explanation. And if you have questions, save them till the end, unless you're like fundamentally not understanding. Like if I've said some things and you didn't understand any of what I said, or you forgot something important, maybe that's an okay time to ask a question. But generally, if you have a corner case that you don't quite understand or things like that, we will probably explain that as we go through the rules, so it's good to hold on to those if you can to see if the question gets answered as we go through the explanation. Also, the other thing that I like to do is if I know that there are some people at the table who have played the game before and I am teaching the game, I try to either strategize with that person in advance to say you are welcome to chime in if you have notes because I know you know the rules better than me or whatever, or explicitly say, I am going to teach people how to play this board game. If you have clarifying notes, we can talk about them at the end. But when you have the one person who's like, and then the strategy is to go and do this particular thing in Food Chain Magnate, you have to get this particular, it's maybe helpful, but sometimes it is not stated at the right time. It'll break the flow of the explanation. And some people who don't go to this panel might be really inclined to try and tell people how to strategically play well, which a lot of people don't like when they're trying to learn a game. They don't want to be told not only these are the rules, but these are the actions you have to take in order to be successful. They want to figure that out, and if somebody else at the table tries to stop them from figuring that out, it can feel kind of frustrating. So the first thing that I'll explain after I've given the really high-level explanation of what the game is, and that high-level explanation might look different depending on my audience. So if I'm teaching Brian how to play Bomb Busters.
I'm the only one here who has not played Bomb Busters.
Right. I'm going to say, Brian, Bomb Busters is a full co-op deduction hidden information game, kind of like backwards Hanabi.
Okay.
Where we are trying to defuse a bomb by cutting wires and you only know what's in front of you. And I say that because I know Brian has played Hanabi and understands kind of what those words are. When I tried to teach my mom how to play Bomb Busters, I said, Mom, we are on a team. You know, you see in the action movies where you're like, you have to cut these wires in this order so the bomb doesn't blow up. We're doing that, but you only know some of the information and you have to figure out the information as we go. But we're on a team, so we're going to be doing everything together. It's going to be fine. So I might explain the top level of the game differently depending on the people in the room. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain kind of as we've got the whole board set up, I'm going to explain the zones of the table. And most games are going to have some sort of zone, whether that's just a deck and your hand, or whether that's something like Bomb Busters that's got your tile stands in front of you, and you're going to have wires on the tile stands, and you're going to have this board that has our lives on it, and it has equipment on it, and it has all these indicators. And I'm going to explain, like, here's our collective information about the bomb. We each have our ends of wires that are in front of us, and you can imagine that the wires are like crossing through the table, and you're trying to find both ends of a wire in order to cut it. And I'm also going to take this time to explain kind of at a high level again what each of the components are that are on the table. So I'm going to say these are blue wires, right? There's going to be some wires that are different colors, but we'll get there eventually. But these blue wires all have numbers on them. There's 4 of each number, and there's 12 numbers. So there's 4 7s, there's 4 9s, right? So we've got all of these different wires. And what are the different pieces, like in terms of what things the players might have control over? So in a game where you've got different food tokens, like in Wingspan, or different little Jordan almond eggs, I might explain that like these are things that you use to feed the birds, and here's a card, and here's some of the information on the card. Then I want to give a really, really top-level explanation of how the game is won, whether it's competitive or co-op. And depending on whether this is like a Euro or an American-style game, I might get really detailed about how to win early on, or I might say, hey, I'm going to explain to you how to get points, and then I'm not going to tell you how the scoring actually works. We'll just like score it at the end when we score, but these are the things that you have to evaluate in order to get points. So in Bomb Busters, I would say, we win a round when we defuse the bomb successfully, and there's different scenarios. This is a legacy-ish game, so each scenario might have a slightly different win condition, but generally we are trying to cut all the wires and not blow up, because if you blow up, oddly enough, you are dead. You have died, because it's a bomb. So, like I said, if I have a game that scores as you earn points throughout, but the scoring calculation is complicated at the end, I want to make sure everybody understands what actions they need to be thinking about. So like in Seven Wonders, I might say, hey, we're going to have military scoring at the end of each age, and so you want to be keeping in mind how much military you have in your neighbors, but I don't need to explain exactly how we're going to fight. I just need people to know, like, if your neighbors build a lot of military and you don't, you might lose points. But I want to explain how the science scoring works pretty specifically in Seven Wonders because it's hard, and if you do it wrong, you might be mad because you lost in a way you didn't expect. And if there's lots of icons, I want people to know what the icons mean. So I take this moment at the start of the game to say, this icon means science, this icon is a victory point, this is a guild, right, whatever the case may be. Bomb-Busters does not have a lot of icons because, well, I mean, if you consider a number an icon, but I don't think I really need to explain, like, this is the shape of a 4, and it means 4. Probably. Know your audience.
I mean, if it was my handwriting, I would probably have to be like, this one's a 4,
This
guys.
one's a
You
4.
have to believe
Yeah,
me.
know your audience. Can your audience read?
Right.
Oh, that's actually
It is true.
So the really nice thing about a game like Bomb-Busters, and I'll talk about this a little more in a second, is that it has some like training turns built in, but this might be depending on the game where I just say, hey, there's going to be some stuff that's like really hard for me to explain unless we're actually playing, so we should just actually play a turn and then we'll start over. Right, we're going to do a little demo turn, which we'll talk about more in detail in a moment. And I'm taking this moment to explain actions like as they become relevant pieces of information. So when I'm teaching Bomb-Busters, right,
Yeah.
your actions on your turn are mostly the same. There's very few extra actions, and because it's co-op, we can explain everything as we get to the actions. So when I want to explain how I take my turn in Bomb-Busters, I've got all my numbered tiles in front of me, and I've sorted them from left to right, lowest to highest. And everybody has to sort their tiles the same exact way. In a game with hidden information like Bomb-Busters or Hanabi, or also like if you're playing Two Rooms and a Boom, and the ways that you distribute information have very specific timings, and the game is like ruined for people if you give more or less info than you're supposed to according to the rules. This is a time where I might be kind of a totalitarian dictator about explaining how the info works. Like, if you mess up the sorting, we have to start over. If you show somebody this card before the rules say you're allowed to show somebody this card, we have to start over. So it's real important, make meaningful eye contact with, again, sorry to drag you, Lauren, at the table to make sure that she's not looking at her phone at the time that I'm saying, like, you can show this part of the card, but not the middle part, right? Got it.
I mean, we've taught Secret Hitler, and somebody goes, ooh, I'm Hitler, and then it's over.
And then it's over, right? And then you have to reshuffle, and it's annoying,
Like,
right?
great.
We've all been there. So I say, you know, we have to sort all of our numbers, and importantly, sometimes there's decimals in this game, Bomb-Busters. So 1.1 is higher than 1 and is lower than 1.5, and that's
one time.
information to distribute. So I say, you know, right, you're sorting from left to right, and we'll explain why that's important as we go. So then I would do a little demo action, and I don't even need to set up the tile stance in order to do this. I can take some wires as I'm asking somebody to sort and shuffle them, and I'll take a couple of them out of the pile, and I'll say, all right, say I've got a 1 and a 2 here, and Jess has a 2 and a 4, right? And hers are, I don't see them, and I see mine. My action is pointing to one of Jess's wires and saying, is that a 2? And Jess either puts the 2 down, she reveals that it's a 2, or she says no, and we lose a life, right? And then there's some information that we all gain, which is 1, that specific wire is or is not a 2. The other thing is everyone at the table knows I have a 2 because wire have 2 ends, is plugged in. And so I know that I've got the other end. If I find Jess's 2, I also put down one of my 2s. Doesn't matter which one, but I picked a specific wire of Jess's. So if we successfully cut, I would put both of the wires down, and if not, Jess is going to give me a hint. She's going to put a thing in front of that wire that indicates what it is, that it's not a 2. Yes, Brian?
See, I raised my hand when I had a question. I wasn't just going to interrupt because she just finished explaining a step, and I said, and then I'll ask a question like, so I can only ask somebody if they have a particular number if I have that number.
Yes, because otherwise you could never be successful in what is called a dual cut action in this game. That's almost every turn. All you're going to be doing is pointing to a particular tile and saying, is that number, or in one case, color, which we'll get to. And that's the whole thing. Sometimes you can take what is called a solo cut action, because if you have all the rest of a wire, whether that's the second pair of 2s or whether you have all 4 2s in front of you, nobody can help you, right? Because you have all of the information. Nobody can ever say, is that a 2? Because you have all the 2s. So you can, on your turn, say, I recuse myself of learning, and I'm just going to use information that I have, right, to just put my wires down. And this might be a time, depending on how much my group likes to think of their own strategy, where I would say, hey, taking a solo cut action is a good safe bet for you. So if you feel like in the future you've got a turn where you don't know what to do, taking a solo cut action is a great thing for you to say, I don't have enough information to do something safe. We only have 1 life left. So I might save my solo cut actions for times when I need a get out of jail free card. But some groups want to figure out that kind of strategy thing on their own, and so I might not tell them that so that they can figure out how they want to handle stuff. There's lots of things in games like Bomb Busters where you can choose to nudge people if they get stressed when they can't figure out what they should do on their turn or how best to act, or you can choose to let people fly free. So that would be kind of how I would go through and explain Bomb Buster. And then there's going to be equipment cards in a game like Bomb Buster, and each of those say what they do on them. So I would tell people, we have some equipment as a bomb busting squad, and depending on how well we're doing with the bomb and what equipment we draw, they do different things. So at the start of our round, I'm going to deal out some equipment, and I'm going to explain what that specific set of equipment does. There's 13 equipment cards, so I'm not going to explain all 13 of them when only 4 of them are going to be in each round. I'll explain the first 4 that I draw randomly out of the deck, and then for our next scenario, I, as the head of the table, I'm going to pick a different set of 4 equipment, so that by the time we get through a few rounds, we've learned all of them. But I didn't need to stop and say, okay, well, some games, when you get an 8, you can use the general radar, and everyone salutes, because that's the age that we are. And then we go 3 rounds without having the radar in the game, and nobody remembers what it is, right? So that's an area where that information is not relevant. So I'll say, there's some equipment that we all have. But I will say, you have on your little character card, it says personal equipment, double detector. Everybody has that, and everybody can use that on their turn. If you see the little guy, he's got his little double detector. So I'll explain what that does, right? The double detector lets you point at 2 things, because it's double, and it lets you detect one of the 2 things. So you say, are either of those a 4? So I would explain that to folks. So I've basically structured this to give the information in this kind of ordered fashion, and I'm only going to get into certain corner cases as they come up, because in a game like Bomb Busters, we have this great setup for learning, but Brian's going to go through some of the different ways that we talk about how you can let people learn a game depending on its complexity without getting really stressed and having a bad time, like I do when I play Sight.
Yeah, so we've gone through the learning, the audience, we've done the teach. They might have questions, you fielded the questions, but sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes, the more tactile learners are going to need to play a little bit of the game in order to actually really get a good grasp on what's going on, get a good idea for the rules. And this is why we suggest doing a learning game or a learning round, where just kind of the stakes are very, very low, and we're just going to reset at the end of it. Obviously, some games lend themselves to this more or less. Bomb Busters is great because, one, you are expected to kind of play a number of different rounds through one play session. So even if you blow up on the first round, just take the round again. Or if you really want to, as Arden said, you can just play with all the wires revealed. And you can just be like, here's us just mechanically going through the game actions, and we're just going to practice that. Some larger games, I'm just going to always shout out Mage Knight for this. We'll have full-on tutorial games where instead of playing through a full game with all the rules, it's slowly going to tease you into all the rules, and it's going to be set up in a very, very structured way. Bomb Buster is also kind of nice because it has that campaign style. It is also going to be slowly drip feeding you those extra rules. It's going to be introducing new components, new equipment, like you said, things like that. Am I missing something?
So yeah, Bomb Busters specifically not only has these increasingly complex scenarios because it's a legacy thing and you might unlock new rules, but the first 8 scenarios of Bomb Busters are for you as a squad to get your bomb busting licenses. So they are training scenarios with training bombs that get increasingly more complicated. So at first you might play with only a few of the 12 numbers, and then you'll play with all of the numbers but no yellow or red wires, which we haven't talked about because I wouldn't talk about them yet when we're sitting down at the table. Yellow and red are colors. So yellow is not a number. So when I want to match yellow wires, I have to point to a wire and say, is that one yellow? So we'll do a whole scenario just introducing that concept. And then the red wire is bad. You die if you cut the red wire. It's like the assassin in Codenames. It just kills you. And Bomb Busters has that built out, so each of these new rules is in a scenario where that's the only thing you're introducing. So then at the 8th scenario, you're playing like a quote-unquote normal game of Bomb Busters. And with some parties, I have people who are like really quick at learning board games because they're sitting here. And so it's really easy. So I say, we're just going to play the training scenario, the last one, and I'm going to teach you all the rules at the same time. We'll have equipment, we'll have the yellow wires, we'll have the red wires, and I'll explain all of them. But when I sat down to learn Bomb Busters at a table where nobody had played it and we were all teaching each other, we'd all watched some YouTube videos, we did every training scenario because we were confused. And it was very helpful because then we didn't have to learn anything that wasn't relevant, and we just learned one thing at a time. All the training scenarios were really easy, so they were super fast. And it still was only one session to play all 8 of those baby scenarios.
I remembered the thing that I always mention here. Does anyone know the game Food Chain Magnate? Okay, we got some weird responses for that. Food Chain Magnate is a notoriously hard game, and it is absolutely shamelessly hard. There's a section in the rules that says it is possible for you to become hopelessly behind, and you will never be able to catch up, and you will just lose. Some games, yeah. Yes, if you don't get a recruiter, I think you just lose. And to that point, like, while that game might not necessarily lend itself particularly well to doing a tutorial, because a lot of the decisions that you have to make are through teaching, you can just say, hey, we're just going to play this for like 30 minutes, and if you feel like we need to start over, like if you feel like you've made enough poor decisions that you don't think you can win, we'll just start over. You as the board game like teacher, the person like leading the board game night, you are likely going to have the most experience, and you're probably going to do pretty well, or I hope you will. So it's really easy for you to just like, okay, I'm going to teach you this game, and then I'm going to crush you in it. Try to avoid that, because that creates a lot of bad feelings, and we want people to come back and play more board games with us. So give them as many opportunities as you can possibly provide for them to learn a little bit more and do a little bit better as quickly as possible.
There's some games where this is especially feasible. Previously, we've talked about Galaxy Trucker during this panel, and one of the great things about Galaxy Trucker is it is a game in 2 extremely distinct phases. You build a spaceship for trucking, obviously, and it's all reaction speed, and you have to be flipping tiles up and know where they go on your board and know where all the connectors go and know how to power the things and know that some of your crew cabins shouldn't be connected because there could be an epidemic and everybody gets the alien disease and dies, whatever. So you know a lot of things about how to put the ship together, and meanwhile the other people at the table barely know anything about how to put the ship together. So what I've done before when I taught Galaxy Trucker was I told people in advance so that this didn't seem patronizing, because it is really easy for this to come across as kind of,
I'm better than you.
Yeah, I'm better than you, right? I looked at your bad spaceship and I think it's poo-poo, so I want you to throw it away. So I would tell people, like, hey, we're all going to build our spaceships normally according to the rules. Nobody's going to get a handicap. I'm not going to, like, play left-handed or, like, keep my eyes closed or whatever. I'm going to build my best spaceship. You build your best spaceship. And then I'm going to switch my ship with anybody who thinks that they did a bad job. And this is great for everybody at the table, because games like Galaxy Trucker are more fun if you are kind of failing a little bit, right? The like white knuckle feeling of like, beans, half my ship fell off, and now I have to see if I can limp across the finish line with only half a ship and like 2 cargo containers. That's really fun, and as a person who's good at building a Galaxy Trucker ship, that doesn't happen to me that often. It sometimes does. I have bad luck, but
Oh, it's so great when they swap and your ship is really bad.
Yeah, because now it's like really fun, and I know that my friends are getting the experience of like learning how all of the mechanics of the game work without feeling like, oh, I've now learned that I'm an idiot, and we're here still, and we are going through this entire space journey, and I can't fix it because we're in the truck. So that type of thing can be very helpful. It's not possible with every game, obviously. Like, I don't think that Food Chain Magnate has a mechanic where you can be like, I'm going to switch my whole stuff unless you stand up. And
yeah, you can't buy my burger franchise from me. That's mine.
Yeah, right. So like that's your thing.
But I
But
wanna.
when there's games where that's doable, or when there's games where it makes sense to do a demo turn, when there's games that have these training scenarios, all of these options are really helpful so that people can feel like they aren't locked into a game that they know they're going to lose from the beginning, because that is a really good way for people to not only have a bad night that night, but also never play that game again. And I say this as a person who played Scythe one time.
I'm so sad.
No other times.
Unfortunate.
It was terrible because I made a bad decision turn 1.
Yeah.
And I could not recover, and so I just sat here looking at this cool board, all these neat components that were ruining my day, all of them, individually and together. So yeah, it's a good way to set people up for having a good first experience where they can actually get their head around the rules.
Yeah, knowing your audience in this case, very useful, because if we are offering to play an open turn or play an open hand or anything like that, make sure that information is delivered politely, so that you're not just being like, hey, Arden, I know you're having a hard time in Scythe. It looks like you're going to lose. Do you want to play again?
You look like you were really dumb and did not understand anything that I explained to you.
No.
So that was how I said it the other time. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to say it better now. So if you could, no, it's fine. We didn't do that.
Yeah.
But we should play Scythe again.
I'll be tough and brave about it someday. 31
Is
years
your
old.
audience tough and brave about it? Okay, so let's say we've been through all of this, and people are still checking out. Lauren's still on her phone. Other people are still. I didn't even look. People's eyes have glazed over. They don't seem willing to run this burger franchise to $1 billion, or to a point where you have ethical considerations about running your business. There are other options for people. If we're getting bored, if we feel like we don't want to play this right now, you can kind of do a few different things. First, you can say, well, with some games, in some game states, you can be like, well, let's put this away and come back to it. There are games like Sleeping Gods or other campaign games where you can just be like, I'm going to stop right now. And you can take a picture of the board state, you can put it away, and come back another time. If there's a game that doesn't, yield itself to that terribly well, there are virtual versions of games that may keep people's attention a little better. If people want to be on their phones, you have our first option here, which is the digital version of Galaxy Trucker. You can play digital versions of board games. If the shiny content rectangle is more gripping for you, then sure, we can do that. There are other digital versions of board games that I always highly recommend here. The digital version of Wingspan is excellent. It is very well done. All of the art is very nice. My only complaint is that the birds move a little jerkily, but they do animate all of the birds. They've got most of the expansions in it. The best part is when you play birds into your conservatory, it plays the bird's call. They've actually recorded every call of the bird in the game, and you get to hear it for the rest of the game as it gently reminds you that you're going to win because you got the Baltimore Oriole and that thing's worth 9 points. Let's go.
I got
yeah.
bird.
Oh, yeah. Big bird game. Speaking of other venues, Board Game Arena is an online way to play games like this. Only one person needs a subscription, and then you can drag as many people through their extensive library as are willing to be dragged. This goes from all the way down from very simple games like checkers all the way up to games like Arc Nova that have a full-fledged tutorial on Board Game Arena. So someone else has already sat down and agonized how to play the zoo version of Food Chain Magnate. On Board Game Arena and deliver all that information for you. Sometimes other places will teach for you, and it's fine. Finally, Tabletop Simulator has a lot of other virtual versions of games that are very nice, questionably legal at some times. So,
But you can flip the table, which is very fun.
but you can flip the table if you have, if you're the legal stickler of your group and you don't want to play this weird modded version of Uno that other people are making you play. Go ahead, flip that table. It'll reset anyway. You might feel better. You may still be stuck playing it.
Yeah.
And these are nice because some of the rules overhead, the minutia of just like moving cards to different piles will be taken care of for you. So it kind of can help you streamline your teach. I mean, in addition to the tutorials that might exist, you might not need to explain how we're going to shuffle this in deal 7. I'm just going to hit the deal button and it'll shuffle up in deal 7. Things like
Yeah.
that.
And it can be nice too because some games are really hard to learn and they take a lot of setup. They're very fun. I'm going to pick on my friends who have been playing Space Cadets with me. Space Cadets is the best board game that's ever been made. It takes 3 hours to teach, and every time you play, it takes sometimes an hour to an hour and a half to set up, depending on how big your table is. But it's really fun. And so when you want to teach people that type of game, sometimes it can be helpful to be able to go in and say, hey, I'm not going to make us sit here for an hour and a half to set up for me to then take 3 hours to teach you something. We're going to set it up virtually, and we're going to play a turn virtually, and then we can vibe out. I'll teach everything, but I don't need to put all of the backgammon tiles or put the things in the bag or shuffle all the things, right? And then if we like it, then I can say, all right, and here's a game I prepared earlier, and I do the like Food Network transition scene where I've got the board game and we sit down and play the board game. But that barrier to entry of like keeping your friends entertained and engaged while you have to set up the game, if the game takes a really inordinately long time to set up, can be really hard. And sometimes you only have like a 4-hour board game night available to you, and you don't want to spend 3 hours of your 4-hour board game night teaching a game. Sometimes you can tell your friends in advance, hey, we're going to learn this game. It's going to be really complicated. I really need you to take your Adderall and then come so that I can teach you this game, because I promise it's going to be fun. But so this way you can also teach virtually in advance, and you can go through and you can say, here's how the game is going to work. And then everyone's going to come over and we're actually going to get 4 hours or 3 hours or whatever to play the game, because we've gone through the whole explanation. Because otherwise what will happen is you will sit down and play Space Cadets with your friends, and you'll spend an hour and a half setting the game up, and you'll spend 3 hours teaching. And Space Cadets, for those who don't know, is a full co-op game where you are the crew of a spaceship and you each have different stations, and your turns are usually like 30 seconds long and you can't talk while they're happening, but they're each extremely different mini games. One of them is a memory game, one of them is poker, one of them is Yahtzee, one of them is, like I said, like a shuffleboard kind of thing. And everybody needs to know how to do their own individual stations. So I went through and I taught everybody how to do the stations that they were sitting in front of, and everyone got really bored because I was not that experienced with teaching board games. And then we drew the card that said change places, and everybody left because they're like, you can't make me learn how to play this game again, because nobody realized that we needed to learn every station. So trying to figure out how you can set everybody at the table up for success in advance is great, because I want more people to be able to play those types of games and not feel like it's just too intimidating to start.
Use technology. It's a tool to help us.
Yeah, there's another thing I remembered to that end. Specifically on Board Game Arena, I and a few people in this room have played the game Gizmos before on there, which my friend is like, yeah. Gizmos is a great game in that you have lots of cascading turns. If you've ever been playing a board game and you've played The Big Turn, you know what I'm talking about, where you're sitting here like, all right, I've played this one card which lets me do these 3 things, I'm going to do this thing, then I'll do these other 2 things, and I'll punch you in the face and do a backflip and I win. And most people that are newer to the game may not see all of that logic laid bare before them, like the folks that are teaching the game and can see the matrix. In this case, Board Game Arena is hard-coded to make sure you get all of the value out of your turn every time, or you can pass. So in this case, you're not, condescending to your friend where you're like, Arden, it looks like your gizmos haven't done this yet. Do you want to do this, or do you want to lose the game? Like, it's not, you don't risk any of that. You don't offend any type of the audience that you already know. The computer will just be like, I need this to be done or you can't finish your turn. And you're like, okay, cool.
You've left action economy on the table.
Yeah, your action is, and like, what are you going to do? Get mad at a computer? That's 5 years down the line. We got to wait on that. So in these cases, some of these hard-coded versions of the game will also kind of help people understand the additional logic behind it until they're a gizmo master and beating the people that taught them by 10 points, which is a lot in gizmos.
All right. We got about 20 minutes left.
Yeah.
So if you guys have questions, please raise your hand. We got you first. We'll be repeating the question, so you'll be able to hear what the question was. We're also realizing a lot of this is to deal with specific people, so you're probably going to get a wide range of answers from all of us. So get ready to pick your favorites. We had you over here first, and then you.
So I recommend BG stats if you guys want to definitely track the games and the win rate. It's really great. But also, do you guys have any recommendations on so with Age of Innovation, there's a bunch of different plans and stuff like that, and then there's also Root where there's the 4 specific things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you happen to know any sites where you can print out little sheets, or do you have to make that on your own? Little reminder sheets.
I mean, I would recommend trying to be the change you want to see in the world.
Repeat the question.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was too excited. The gist of the question was, do we know of any places or resources where we might be able to create cheat sheets, things like that, as additional player aids? Besides Board Game Geek, maybe going on and all the other places that I talked about, like Discord, Reddit, things like that, that will get you probably 90%. I don't know off the top of my head if there is a specific place that is here's just board game reference documents that we've created. But if you can't find it and you like really think it's important, like make it yourself. I mostly do inserts for my board games just to make all the expansions fit.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, if I can't find like somebody who's made like a diagram for all the foam core I'm cutting out, I'm gonna build it myself. And then if I think I did a good job, I'm gonna put it up on Board Game Geek. Be like, here's how I made everything in Mage Knight fit. 'Cause-
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that can be helpful about making something yourself is, like we've talked a lot about, knowing the people that you're playing with. There's some people who don't need any sort of player assistance, and if I'm playing with that group all the time, right, I'm really lucky and I've got my 5 friends who all live down the street from me and we play heavy board games together all the time. I might have either no accompaniment that I create, or I might have something that's really high level to just say, like, here's the 3 things that are different about this character from the other characters. And if I'm playing this game and I know that I might be always teaching this game every time I sit down with it, I might want to make a more detailed player aid that is like, here's the things that I know everybody asks when they play the Erie every time, and I'm always going to put those on a sheet, and I'm just going to put it in the bag with the pieces for that faction.
Yeah, I will say one too, as well. There are a few companies that are very, very good about customer service. Stonemeyer, I have to shout them out every time. They will provide replacement pieces, but also I would say email the publisher, see if they have anything that they're willing to provide. A lot of the people on the other side of these customer service spots are either just receiving complaints or part requests a lot. So having someone be like, hey, I really like your game. Do you have any more information? They might be more inclined to help you out as a result. And sometimes it does work. When my partner and I were playing Arnak, Lost Temple of Arnak, I believe it's called, we did lose a piece and we had to email for a replacement. But in their response email, they were also like, hey, if you need more resources, please go here or here. And I didn't ask for that at all. So reach out to the publisher. They got more info for you. They're pretty happy to hear from you. It's like talking to librarians. Same deal.
All right. Yes.
Well, first off, forgive me because I can't remember, but how do you best balance doing your teaches when you are working with people who might have where there might be a blend of different, say, learning styles? I mean, obviously, from like learning styles, like maybe some more visual, or like hearing it versus some examples. How do you best handle the balance of catering towards the all new people and different styles, while also trying to of course, be efficient and start trying to get the important information out?
Yeah, so the question is, how do you balance your teach for people who have different learning styles? Say you know that some people really need to like get their hands on the pieces or really need to maybe like read something versus how many people want you to explain like auditorily? They want to hear it.
Orally.
Orally, sure.
You are.
So I think part of that, if you know when you start that you have this kind of blended group, sometimes it can be helpful to actually direct portions of your teach to certain people if everybody's cool about that kind of thing. To say like, all right, I know that you are going to really want to handle the pieces, so I'm going to hand you a card while I explain this, because I know that you actually want to read the card and it's helpful for you to be able to look at what I'm explaining, versus if I hand you a card, you will just look at it and not pay attention to what I'm explaining anymore, and you won't understand either portion of that. So I might not hand Eric a card, and I might only look at Eric and like point to the things on the card as I'm explaining them, and then hand him a card while I'm doing something else that is not relevant, or while I'm like taking a second to check something in the rules, so that he can do the audio, then do the visual. You don't always have that level of information going into a teach, because maybe you haven't taught a complex board game to this group, or maybe you haven't combined these folks before. And in that case, it can be helpful to try and structure your teach as if you had all of those different types of people in the audience. So that you're not just explaining and never handing them things, and you're not just handing them things and just expecting that they'll read them and pick up the pictures, and you're not just saying, all right, I'm going to show you how I take my turn and I'll explain it as I go, and not giving the prep detail for people who are going to have trouble keeping up if they haven't gotten a high level explanation of how the turn goes before we get started. So assuming that you're going to need to pepper in a few different options from the beginning, pretty much always, unless proven otherwise, can be pretty helpful. Because that way you don't have to wait for someone to communicate that need. Because sometimes that can feel stressful, right? When you're in a group of like 6 people and you feel like you're the only person who does not understand something that's being explained to you, that can feel pretty defeating pretty quickly. And it's very easy to watch everyone else at the table go, oh, yep, absolutely, I'm ready to go. And you're like, if you don't hand me that card so that I can look at it with my human eyes, I'm going to die. But nobody else needed to read it, so now I feel stupid and like I'm going to die, and that's the worst. So it can be helpful to just not feel like anybody needs to get to that like crisis point of not understanding the explanation before you proactively say, I'm going to say some stuff about this card, and then I've got a card for each of you that I want you to look at and let me know if you have any questions, right? So I think that, in my experience, has been the best choice rather than trying to like just say, all right, well, most people are visual learners, so I'm just mostly going to hand people stuff.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that a little bit, just know your audience, like we were saying. The more you know the people, the better you are to hand the pieces to the right people and talk to the right people. If you know someone is just not going to be able to be focused for however long it takes to learn, maybe you send them a YouTube video before you start teaching. You know, maybe you let them teach themselves if they need to, and then you can focus your time on the people that need to have their specific answers or specific questions answered in order to feel like they're learning.
Yeah. I have a friend who they learn very well by reading. But I know that they are like that. So typically what I'll do is I'll explain the game, and then as I'm getting everything set up, I'll take the rule book, which I've kind of been using as a prop and reference guide, I'll hand it to them. And I don't see that as a defeat of my teach. I just understand that this person, they would love to read things a little bit more clearly. They like to, to get that level of expertise, and that's just how they learn the best. So I don't have a problem with them reading through the rule book or anything like that. I try not to take the phrase, hey, can I just see the rule book, as a defeat of my teach. Because there are sometimes you did teach bad and they do need to just read the rule book, but most of the time they just have some question that maybe they can't quite like put into words and ask you directly. And just for them, it just gives them a little bit more security and just kind of how things are going. The little player reference cards, there's normally like turn order stuff like that. That's also really helpful. If I know someone is like, they do like to read through things, I'll make sure that they have one of those in front of them. Sometimes games don't come with enough. And then I'll just I'll talk about each step and make sure that they're reading along with that. So you kind of have options, but once again, unfortunately, it does come down to know the people you're playing with. And don't feel bad if your teach didn't hit every base, but just be ready to improvise and help them out as much as you can.
Yeah. Final edge case here. If you are in a scenario where there's a person that you do not know at your table, and maybe they're like hanging out for the first time, or you've never taught them a board game before, ask them how they like to learn. People like to be asked questions pretty much all the time. They like to tell you about themselves, unless there are people that don't like to do that. But in either case, they will probably respond with how they like to learn best. And then you can immediately be like, oh, okay, mystery person that I've obviously never met before in my life is a visual learner. Here's this card. Don't eat it. Please read it. And then go from there.
Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Think you, then you, then you. I think that'll be.
The question is, how do you shame your friend into getting better at teaching board games?
I have a thought. We all have thoughts. we all have this person.
There are 2 options. One is be the change you want to see in the world. You become the better board game teacher, and you teach them board games and gradually make it clear that they have a better learning experience when it's structured this way. It can be more productive that way. You're not directly calling them out. You're just saying let me show you a better path, right? By modeling a better teaching style. The other option is I think it's okay to politely and outside of the moment when the board game is being taught say, hey, man, I really like playing board games with you, but I really struggle with the way that you explain things. Can you try explaining them in a different way, or can I try learning the board game beforehand, you tell me what we're going to play, and then I go through it then, right? The appropriate moment for that is not in the middle of it, right? It's not, you just won't have a fun day if you stop somebody in the middle of explaining how to play Scythe and you go, you're bad at this. This sucks, right? That might end this encounter, but it might not end the encounter in the way that you want, where you continue to play the board game.
Yeah, they're not going to improve their board game teach immediately mid-teach.
And they're going to be defensive and sad.
Yeah.
So.
Another option is I do believe that a recording of this panel will be available on YouTube, and you could just send it to them.
Yeah.
You. Be better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just being like open and honest after you play through the game. Just maybe like you can do like little tiny helpful notes just to be like, hey, you really didn't need to explain this all that well. I think I just got it from reading the cards. Or just you can like force them to optimize a little bit. But if it's like, you might just have to become better at them at teaching board games and just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stage a board game.
First you bring coup, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and then you teach coup well. and
Yes,
then-
Yeah.
and then that's the coup.
Pepper their board game teach with assurances that you want to have fun.
Yeah. Oh, one other quick note on this: the like, be the change you want to see in the world. I think also if you want to have a conversation with somebody about how you struggle to learn board games when they teach board games, the best first step is for you to be the best learner possible and demonstrate that you really are trying and you understand that they're trying to help you have fun and set you up for success and everything. And then say like, look, I'm really trying. You sent me a YouTube video about the game and I watched it. I followed all the instructions. I always lose every time, and I'm not that bad at board games. But it can, I think, be easy if the person who's teaching you is not helpful to like check out and just like not be engaged in the game, and then it looks like you are not also coming to the table to be better in the situation. So saying, look, I'm going to try to be a good learner. I would love it if you could try to be a good teacher, and we'll work on it together so that I can show you what is the best learning style for me and you can try and teach a little better. Because then you're not just saying, like, you're doing a bad job. You were saying, like, hey, I want to continue to play board games with you in the long haul. I'm trying, you're trying, let's all try. It'll be great. And then you play Secret Hitler and you kill them.
Somebody had a question here. Yes. Yes, you.
Have there been any games that any of you have experienced that you just had to bow out on because the teaching instead of being way too complex, other than, I guess, Space Cadet?
Oh, okay. So the question is, have we ever tapped out of a teach? Certainly, when we were teaching audiences as our job, we've had to. I've definitely bowed out of a teach. Like you give an elevator pitch for the game, like you give them that lead, and they seem interested in it, and then as you start going through the teach, you start to see those eyes glaze over, and then you kind of have to be like, "Do you guys want to pick a different game? Like, are you guys on board with this?" And then they'll be like, "I'm like, okay, Battleships it is."
Yeah. I've definitely bowed out after that demo turn because, like, the demo turn is helpful for two reasons. One, everyone can, like, try the turn and make sure that they understand the game. But also, I've sat down and played board games before. I think it might have been with you, where we took a turn of a game. It was like a deception type game, and then we went through one round. And you said, "I hate this. Can we play another game?"
No
And-
deception games. Don't
Right.
lie to your friends. Play a different game.
Oh yeah, what was it? We played it was like a card like role playing game where we were like goblins or
Oh,
something.
I Dark Overlord.
Yes.
And we played, and I like
Wait, no,
I Dark
I like that
Overlord.
game.
Yeah,
Right. No,
right,
that's a
it's
good game.
Yeah, but opinions can differ. So this is like an improv-heavy game where you're like doing some RPG storytelling, except you're the minion of a Dark Overlord, so you're supposed to be an evil little guy.
Yeah, you had to be a jerk.
Yeah, and it was really fun, I thought, but it's okay if people don't like it. And establishing a culture in your play group where people can say, "Hey, I don't like this," and then you give up, and that can be. During the explanation, I talk about my mom a lot because we do try to get her to play board games, and she is a willing participant, and then sometimes she's like, "Y'all, I'm not getting it, I don't understand." And if you never give people that out, or if you shame people for taking that out, that can be really challenging because then people feel like they're not going to want to take the step of trying to learn that new game with you because they know if they say yes, they're going to be locked in no matter what. So then giving people hey, we've played this for 15 minutes. If we continue, it'll be another 90. How we feeling, gang? Can be really productive. And again, that can happen at any point in the process. I would say other than like, hey, we've played the whole game and now I don't want to score. Right. That's kind of lame. But just saying like, hey, we're going to have a few exit valves that we can pull, right? Like if somebody at the table is like, I'm going to lose it if we continue to do this. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. We've also decided, my partner and I were trying to learn Arc Nova for the first time. We still haven't gotten all the way through it. But when we did, we were like, all right, let's look at this rule book. Oh, no. And then after saying oh, no repeatedly, we looked and we're like, okay, here's a chunk that we can learn now. let's learn how the action cards work in Arc Nova. We're going to have to relearn that because it's been a year and a half. But someday.
This is a really long teach.
It's a very, very long teach. Just play
It's
it
a
on
lengthy
BGA, please. But yeah, in that case, we can sort of just not fully tap out, but be like, hey, we've learned this bit, and now Battle Sheeps it is.
Yeah.
Always
Have a
battle
backup
sheets.
game. Like if people are coming over to your house, you have all your board games, have something, ready to pull off the shelf that everyone kind of knows and already has fun with, or is a really, really simple teach. Or if you're going to somebody else's place to bring a board game to teach, still bring a backup just in case. Especially if you feel kind of unsure if this is the right fit for the audience. If
Yeah.
this is kind of a stretch game that you want people to play and enjoy, just be ready for them to bounce off of it.
And sometimes people will bounce off of it for like no reason. Like everybody's on board with playing Yokohama. Everyone's in for like the tableau builder of building ships and doing trade in Japan. And then somebody has a bad day at work and you get to your game night and that person's like, yesterday I was so on board with using my brain. Today I am not. And then you pull out magical animals out of your backpack and you're really ready for just like, hey, you're going to roll one die and you're going to fall over. And that's the board game.
Magical
and it works out
athlete.
for everybody. Oh, magical athlete.
Magical
That's-
athlete.
It's only some of them are animals. Some of them are legs.
We have you and then you. We have 5 minutes left. Feel free to come up afterwards and continue to talk to us. We're very pleasant people. I hope we've demonstrated that. But
Yeah, you sort of started answering my question already, but I was wondering if you had any go-to simple teach games for people who aren't in the best space for learning. If it's tired or people are drunk.
Magical athlete.
Magical athlete.
Magical athlete.
yeah,
Skull.
simple games to teach
Yeah.
is the question.
I think it's good to rotate out your simple games because if the popcorn option is always the same, people will get bored. But having things like Magical Athlete is good. Skull is easy because you can really play it anywhere that you have coasters or the box is really small, so it's easy to bring with you. Love Letter was mine for a long time because, again, it's like just a bag and you can just carry the bag with you.
I'd also recommend really simple card games like that, like the game, the mind, where you're really just teaching people here's what a deck of cards look like, and here are the actions that we're gonna take.
Yeah, a lot of the Oink games are good for this. Like
gonna
Fake
say,
Artist
yeah.
Goes to New York. They're like the peak of board games. They're just like fun, goofy games to play with your friends.
Yeah.
The rules aren't that complicated.
Not like the peak.
Yeah, not like the peak, like the video, this one.
Scout.
Yeah.
Scout's so good.
Oh, yeah. There's one back there.
No, that was.
How do you teach games? A lot of these games have their own internal board game logic, kind of build off each other. Let's say you're dealing with people who never play anything beyond Monopoly, and how do you adjust to those kinds of
Yeah. So the question is, let me see if I got this right. How would you teach a more complex board game to people who maybe have really low levels of experience, where for the people who are really into board games, there might be a lot of mechanics that are very common to board games, but if somebody's only really played maybe the entry-level hobby games like Catan or Ticket to Ride, how do we get them up? Not even
like
those,
Monopoly
like
and
Monopoly.
Parcheesi. Yeah.
Like, yeah. Yeah, so I like the idea of a ladder teach, where instead of we're going to start with the big game with all the mechanics, we're going to take those primary mechanics, we're going to figure out what they are, and we're going to play a game that is pretty much just that mechanic. So for something like a deck builder or a drafting game, let's take a drafting game, or the drafting mechanic, we might just play Sushi Go. That is simply a game where people learn how to draft. And that's the primary mechanic. You're going to win based on how well you draft. And then we can take that, and when we go to the bigger game, we're going to say, oh, you remember Sushi Go? We're going to draft just like that.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to decide that you are going to gaslight somebody into enjoying board games. And you do this by laying a little candy trail all the way through the forest. Yeah, a little Jordan almond here, a little Jordan almond there.
One gives me an egg.
Yeah, you get one egg and you eat it, and it's
You eat
plastic.
Yeah.
But so it doesn't even need to be the ladder teach style of here's our specific complicated game that we want to play, and I need you to teach all of the components in separate games. Sometimes it's just, you are a Monopoly player, you've expressed that you want to get into my hobby because we're friends, and so I'm going to teach you something like Catan, that is basically Yahtzee with shapes. I Will Die on This Hill is Yahtzee. It's Yahtzee with hexagons. And so then you can say, all right, now you've played one of the intro board games. Maybe now we'll play Seven Wonders because that's another common intro board game. And then you give them like the gateway game in each category of games that you might play as a group. And that also can exempt games that are in categories that your play group doesn't play, so you don't need to worry about developing that vocabulary for your victim or friend, whatever you want to call them. And so you are structuring almost a curriculum for that person so that they can have the intro that you probably had when you were learning board games. Because you can think back, hopefully, in your mind palace to what games you learned as you were going from a Monopoly person to this nerd. And give them that experience so that you're not just saying like, hey, your options are Monopoly or Twilight Imperium. Get good, right? Like, it had to come up at some point.
Yeah, it would have been a horrible
Was there a
panel
bet?
if we didn't
Are we
name
on
drop
Salty
Twilight
Buzz?
Imperium.
I hope so.
I didn't think North Africa was going to be right off the rip, though.
Yeah.
I'll go right for it. My friends know I go right for it.
Yeah.
That help?
Thank you. Is that how you say? Is that how you pick your normie friends and like games with you?
Yeah.
Yes, and it has worked really well.
Yeah, we've gotten some people who are like, I don't like board games. They're too complicated. I just can't learn. We get them into a roll and write, and they're like, oh, I understand this now. This is a lot of fun. And then like, we're in.
We got him.
Yeah.
We're unfortunately out of time for addressing people with the microphones. Do you feel like you've learned anything today?
Yay! Thank you
Sweet.
for coming.
We'll be here for a little bit longer if you have any
Yeah, we're gonna
questions you wanna
loiter.
come up.
And if you want to take your newfound skills and take advantage of them either in the Indie Tabletop Showcase or in the Tabletop Free Play area.
Yeah, see if
this
you can
is a
find
great
Bomb
time.
Busters. You guys all know how to play that now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's like Hanabi, but with numbers, and you die in the end.
Is this yellow?
If you're bad.
Yes, that's yellow. You cut it.
But it's also red.
Yeah.
Don't cut it.
We got kicked out forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, we
Which is
saw
good. Bomb Busters was out of stock for like 18 months. So if you want it and you think it sounds fun, you should buy it now because it goes out of print pretty regularly and the print runs are long.
We're not sponsored, promise.
We're not sponsored. I just like the game. It's very
Yeah.
fun.
Rami.
It's a very
There's a standee. You only use it at the
We come
end.
here every year and we shill a game we love,
Yes,
basically.
and this year it's bombs.
Just this year.